and a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you're listening to another episode of Coaster Kings Radio. And today's episode is all about Shanghai and Shanghai Disney. So this most recent China trip, we started and I was going to say ended in Shanghai. It was actually not accurate because we were supposed to end in Shanghai. And then like a few hours before we changed our mind, we flew to Hong Kong and ended there. Like, you know, that is just our life. But anyway, so we started our trip in Shanghai, and obviously if you've listened to our more recent episodes, we did a separate Beijing trip that we just did, so there's all sorts of tourist attractions and mostly Universal Studios Beijing and Happy Valley Beijing that we've talked about in those episodes, so go ahead and check that out if you haven't yet. But anyway, this trip that came literally like a week and a half later, we went back to China, and this time we went to Shanghai, and we started our trip with Shanghai Disneyland. Now, we have one hotel we like to stay at that we've stayed at 3 times now, and it's a courtyard, and it's in the Pudong area, and it's the courtyard Shanghai International Tourism and Entertainment Zone or something. Yeah. And that is right by Shanghai Disney, and not too far from the airport. And they have shuttles to and from the airport and to and from Disney, so it's really convenient if you're like don't want to stay on site or if you're also doing other things. So we stayed there before, and we stayed there again. And it was a great stay. We had this crazy big king bed.
The bed was amazing.
It was like the biggest bed we've ever had. And that was pretty sick. And the breakfast was good. Overall, we had a good stay there. I mean, it wasn't anything special because we just were there for 2 nights. We got in, went to bed pretty early, and then got up at the crack of dawn, like 5 a.m. to go to Shanghai Disney. Because Shanghai Disney opens up early, and then you can buy an extra hour of early admission, which we did. And you can... Then you want to show up early for that because it's kind of for production. But we'll get to that in just a minute because on the back end of the trip, we went to Shanghai as well for 2 days. And we stayed at the iconic JW Marriott at Tomorrow Square in the center of Shanghai. And we had an amazing room with the skyline view. They upgraded us to a suite, which is awesome. So we had an awesome suite. And we had a beautiful view of the financial district. And we did a couple things in Shanghai that we're going to talk about for a little bit before we dive into our day at Shanghai Disney. Alexander, how do you start?
Is it Tomorrow Square or People's Square?
So at the People's Square and Tomorrow Square, I think, are interchangeable because Tomorrow Square was the name of the hotel, but People's Square is the name of the square.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you Google... Oh, Tomorrow Square is the name of the skyscraper that the hotel is inside of.
Got you. Well, that explains a lot.
So yeah, if you Google Tomorrow Square, you'll get this pointy, spooky-looking skyscraper.
Yeah, it was once like an iconic skyscraper. It's still iconic.
The hotel is inside of.
Yeah, and it's on the top floor.
2003. Cool. And then People's Square is the park that's across.
People's Square, yeah. Anyway.
When we got there, our room wasn't ready, so we went to one of our favorite Shanghai establishments, the Reserve Roastery. Now, we've noticed that Starbucks Reserve Roasteries, like Starbucks has been kind of putting Reserve Roastery on like any store that they feel like.
That serves like special items, but
there's a Reserve Roastery in Manhattan that we went to, and it was super lame.
And then went to another one that was a little bit less lame, but still kind of lame.
Yeah.
And then so there's a couple out in China too that are not as great, but then there is like the original Starbucks Reserves were really meant to be like a showcase and with bars and specialty food. So this one in Shanghai is a 2-level experience almost, where you have a bakery with all sorts of unique baked items, hot food that they serve, and then all sorts of specialty coffees that you can only get there. And then the second floor also serves some of those food items, but then they have a wine and a wine and beer section and like a cocktail bar. So the wine and beer section have like different kinds of tea beers and tea wines, I believe, and coffee beers. And then you have the actual, like, the bar, which has a bunch of different cocktails or mocktails that are tea and coffee inspired, which are really great. And then if you want your specialty coffees, they're all going to be, like, downstairs. But anyway, it's a grand setup with a show, and all the coffee beans roll through, like, these tubes in the ceiling, and they, like, roast it fresh. It's very awesome. I love it.
A little Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory moment, but with coffee. And, like, it's not just for show. Like, they really do make a blend of coffee right there in the store, right in front of everyone.
It smells great. The experience is great. It's nothing like a typical Starbucks.
It's such a neat souvenir to go to a Starbucks that literally makes its own coffee beans, and then you can buy the coffee beans there and take them home.
Yeah, well, roast them. Yeah,
roast them. Yeah, make
them.
Well, yeah. There's no coffee farm.
Right, but you said make.
They make the coffee beans, like making the
processing
bean into a coffee bean from the coffee cherry is like its own thing, right? Like, isn't that
yeah, I'm pretty sure they get the beans and
they make
roast
the bean
them there,
into the thing that you make coffee out of. There. Anyway, so then we go back to the hotel. Our room is ready. I think it's pretty cute.
Should we tell what we had? Do you remember what we had? We had 2 drinks. First of all, it was kind of busy. We had to wait for a while to get a table upstairs. Downstairs, we got a table pretty quick.
Some very cute cocktails. I don't exactly remember the details.
One was a gin-based one, and for effect. And then one was like a...
I know mine had
really
yuzu and black pepper in it.
Start bringing the whole story, and then I don't remember what it was. Mine was like some sort of tea and infused gin or whatever.
It's an excellent menu.
It was awesome.
With rotating cocktails and things.
Very visually
even if we could
amazing.
Remember the exact details of what we ordered, there's no guarantee that would be the menu when you go to the Shanghai Reserve Roastery. So just rest assured that, like, if you go, it will be excellent, and you will really enjoy the options. Then we went back to the hotel. The lobby of the hotel, by the way, is like, it's up really high. It's toward like the top of the building. And there's a fantastic view of People's Square Park. And inside the park is a little kiddie coaster that we were able to admire.
We had that view from our room too, because you were just kind of above the lobby, a couple floors above the lobby, facing the same direction. And if you really want to be nerdy, the Oriental Pearl Tower, which is very visible from our room too, also is a roller coaster.
Has a coaster in it. So we can see like
coasters as far as I could see.
Multiple kiddie coasters visible from the room. And we went to West Nanjing Road, which is like their Times Square of sorts. It was more congested and touristy than we remember.
Yeah.
And since we went there at the end of our trip, we'd already done a lot more like culturally interesting and cool and like less touristy.
Yeah, because maybe I should give a quick review of all the things we did on the trip to see if kind of a grand idea of what we did between Shanghai Disney and our actual Shanghai time.
Right.
But we came into Shanghai, then we went, to Shanghai Disney, and then we took a plane to Chengdu, which is in the western part of China, in the Sichuan province. And we also went to Leshan, which is maybe like an hour and a half bullet train from there. And then we went to Chongqing, which is not in the Sichuan province officially, but in the same region because it's its own city province. Tier 1 city. And then we took a plane to Nanjing, and we spent a couple of days in the Nanjing area, and then we went back to Shanghai. So our actual time in Shanghai proper was at the very, very end of doing a long, like, 2-week tour throughout the mainland of China, really.
So yeah, by the time we got to West Nanjing Road, this was something that we really enjoyed our first couple of trips to China. And if you've never been to China before, and Shanghai is like your gateway into mainland China, then it's like more impactful. And now it feels like it's there's too many. I don't want to say that the Westerners are the problem, like the Western tourists, but there's a lot of scalpers and people trying to sell you stuff and swindle.
Yeah, trying to put you like a watch on you
and
like sell it to you.
And the reason why it's a problem in Shanghai is because there's so many Western tourists that fall for it. Whereas in other parts of China, like the parts of China that we were visiting, there's less of that because there's less international tourists.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is
like
there are no tourists, and a lot of China since it reopens after COVID, there is no one. Like we will be in Chengdu and we see maybe a couple of white people or Westerners, maybe like where the malls are. But like anytime we went anywhere else, it was like that. In Leshan, we were like the only Westerners from Leshan for sure.
Yeah. We saw one German lesbian couple. That was it.
Yeah, and then. God, what else? Like in Chongqing, we're the only Westerners. I think we saw like a group of Dutch people. Funny enough, like at the cable car.
Yeah, there was some Dutch folks and
like
some
business
Asian
guys.
Folks, but
other than that, like but then in Shanghai, it's by far the most Western city in all of China, and that's always been like that. But it's also now after COVID, by far the most Western part of China, which makes it a lot more like the touristy parts. Like is more hokey. Like they're just trying to sell you stuff and. You know, it just wasn't really. I don't really like that. I don't really care for the tourists.
Feel like the cultural experience, the Shanghai experience that it used to feel like. But luckily, we did a lot of other Shanghai-related things on this trip that checked that box for us. This was like our travel day. We actually came in by rail from Nanjing that morning, so it was a travel day, hotel check-in day, and we checked off a couple of things that we wanted to do, namely the Starbucks roastery because that's really close to our hotel, and that's a tradition for us. We've gone to the roastery every time we've been to Shanghai, and we probably will traditionally, like, we will continue to do that forever. And then another thing that we've done every visit, in addition to West Nanjing Road, is go to the Bund and look at the skyscrapers, which the skyscrapers are still really wonderful. They don't quite compare to what we got to enjoy in Chongqing, but like Chongqing's skyscraper setup will kind of ruin skyscraper setups in other cities, like
100%
forever.
It's kind of funny because it made Shanghai, which is one of the most dense skyscraper scenes in the world, feel kind of unskyscraper.
Yeah, but Shanghai is still like their big four, like their four standout skyscrapers, and all of the other supplementary like support skyscrapers nearby are still really great and still really enjoyable. We took a nice long walk around the Bund. For dinner, we went to Olay, which is a Spanish-themed import grocery store.
Yeah, well, actually, we went there. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's
we went
different
twice.
days. Sorry, because
we
forgot that we went.
We went in
there the first
Chongqing, and that's how we discovered it, and that was what made us decide to do that in Shanghai. Because like we were really enjoying our room. There were a couple of our hotel rooms on this trip were so great that we were like, let's just go buy some groceries.
Yeah, because we got two, like in both in Chongqing and in Shanghai, we got upgraded to like a really big, luxurious ass suite. So we're like, all right, so now we want to spend a little bit of time in the suite. So it was nice in Chongqing because Chongqing was a little bit harder to find good vegetarian food or even like fruit, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So it was nice that we were just able to buy a ton of food and just like hang out in the room and eat. And in Shanghai, it was kind of busy, and we didn't really find a restaurant we wanted to go to, and we wanted to just kind of eat something before we went out to the Bund, because here's the thing with like Chinese skyscrapers, the lights are on, but then the lights are off like 2 hours later. So if you wanted to have that iconic view of all the lights on the skyscrapers, and especially the Shanghai Financial District, you got to time that well. You have to be there when it's light, and then when the lights are on. And then 2.5, 3 hours later, I think in the summer at 11 p.m. will the lights turn off, and in the winter at 10 p.m. So you have to kind of be there early, and so fitting in a nice long dinner wasn't going to fit. So we ended up getting some groceries, going back to the room, snacking a little bit, and then we took a cab out to the Bund just for the time's sake. It ended up taking longer than the train because, Didi lied to us. But it was worth it anyway.
Didi is the
Dark Chinese Uber. And in the North Bund, like Alex mentioned, so we started in the classic part of Bund where all the old embassies were, which is touristy and busy, but iconic views, and it's kind of pleasant to walk around because the river's right there, so you get some fresh air. And then we actually crossed this bridge towards the Russian embassy, and then there's where the North Bund Park is, and that was really not busy at all. And we walked around for a while, and the views were great. I felt like we were even closer to the buildings than we were on the old Bund.
Even better there.
Yeah, but it is a relatively new complex, and I will say, towards the end of it, it's kind of abandoned. Like, we had a hard time getting out of there.
Yeah.
Because you walk through, like, these abandoned buildings, and you're trying to find, like, if there was a taxi stand, and the taxi wouldn't take us, and then I ended up getting us a DD from the bus station. It wasn't ideal, but it was a good night anyway.
Just considering how chaotically busy the, like, main part of the Bund is, it's amazing that there's this north part that has views that are just as good, if not better, but it's actually, like, very secluded. And it was, like, a cute park, and, like, lots of people were on dates. It was really, really nice. So that would be our recommendation for Bund visiting. And then, so we left. The skyscrapers all went out. We went to bed. The next day was like our full Shanghai sightseeing day.
Which, admittedly, we hadn't done like a full Shanghai sightseeing day in a minute. Because I think our last time we did a full day
was in 2018.
2018, because in 2019 we combined some other stuff in there too. So this was kind of nice to have a full day of sightseeing. Yeah.
I think the first thing that we did was we decided to ride the maglev. And the maglev is cool because it's technically the world's fastest passenger train. And really one of the only examples of magnetic levitation commercial rail transit. And it's just a shuttle line that goes back and forth between the Shanghai, like in the city, and the airport. And so we just rode it back and forth for the heck of it.
Yeah, so the maximum speed, which it used to reach all the time, was 186 miles per hour. Actually, it reached 268 for a while, but then it stopped doing it. So, like, during rush hour in the first, like, however many years, because it closed, like, they stopped doing it in 2021, it would run at 268 miles per hour, but now it's just down to 186 miles per hour, which, like, that's not super crazy for, like, a bullet train, because a lot of trains in China run that fast nowadays. But it was just cool because it's iconic and it's all levitation.
Yeah.
So the train line, I think it's like 10 minutes each way. And you can just buy a ticket just to go round trip. You can use it within 7 days. If you were to actually live in a city, go to the airport, go on a work trip, and take the maglev back, which is what it was designed for. You could do that, but I feel like it's mostly as a tourist attraction at this point. I think of everyone we saw on the train, there was maybe like 20% of people actually having luggage with them and going to the airport. Maybe, and I read something about this, is because it's actually not that convenient of a train line. It kind of just ends in Multi City, and then they built it right next to another metro station.
But they're not
even connected. So, like, you walk in this weird alleyway that looks like the backside of a freaking, like,
department store.
Like, sushi restaurant. And then, it's kind of gross, and then you have to then rescan into the actual train station. So, it's not actually that useful, but it's cool for, like, the touristy part of it, in my opinion. And so, when you take the train out, and then there's obviously the inevitable part in the middle where you pass another train. I think that's the most exciting part of the whole journey.
Oh my god, that part.
Because when the other train comes by, and we knew on the way over that the other train was coming because there was some tour guide in the bus on the train telling their tour group, like, all right guys, look out this way. In just a few seconds, the other train's gonna come by. So like, all right, let's look. Even though we weren't part of that tour group, and the train came by, and it's almost like. The sound of it was weird.
It's like a bomb going on.
It was like a bomb. It was super loud, like this wiggle. Even though I've been on many high-speed trains that pass each other, and this felt very different.
It was like
maybe because of the levitation, because you're not like stuck to a track.
Yeah.
So like you really are kind of moving through the air like a shockwave. Because when you do depart, you're departing even though the train isn't moving because you suddenly feel the magnets turn on and the whole train just gets lifted up into the air. And like magnetically gets forced up. It's kind of weird. And then you're like floating through air. Smoothest train right now.
The fact that this thing has no wheels like blows my mind. Like it's not even like there isn't even like side friction or upstop wheels on this thing. There's no wheels. There's no engine. Like it just is. It's just magnets.
Yeah, it just levitates the whole way.
For everything. The magnets don't just lift it off of the road. Like they don't just eliminate the need for road wheels. They literally eliminate the need for any other kind of method of propulsion or any other kind of like mechanism necessary for propulsion.
And then when you slow down, it just slowly turns on the methods and parks it there again. So
crazy.
That was fun. And then we came back to the city and we went to Old Shanghai.
And which
is kind of cool because, especially because later in the trip we could see Old Shanghai and the Shanghai from the 80s and we'll get to that in a second. But the biggest thing was to go to Yu Garden, which, long story short, in the imperial times of the Ming Dynasty, was it Ming Dynasty?
Yeah,
Ming Dynasty.
Lots of Ming Dynasty.
This one guy who was part of the imperial courts failed his imperial test and disappointed his parents. So to prove that he wasn't a disappointment, he built this giant garden in the city. I mean, Shanghai wasn't big back then, but and he built that for his parents so that the parents would think it were disappointment. That's kind of like the abbreviation of the story.
Yeah,
and the gardens are really fascinating. It's not big, because it's in the middle of a city and it was attached to living spaces, but it's pretty.
It's beautiful.
It's very pretty.
And lots of nooks. Like it's bigger than it seems. When you first walk into it and see the little courts, it's a lot of little courtyards, little vignettes and stuff, and it actually is bigger than it seems when you first walk into it.
I'm kind of lost trying to get out of there, actually.
Oh my god,
it's like a maze.
Well, yeah, it's like it was like you can enter several different ways, but you can only exit one way. There's like a designated exit point that threads you through Old Shanghai and like all the markets and stuff. It's, it's practical commerce related, so like I get it. But it was kind of not easy. Once we decided we were ready to leave, we were still in there for quite some time, like trying to figure out our way out.
Yeah, but it was very pretty.
Very pretty.
The details on the buildings and the rockworks and the ponds and the little bridges, and it was very, very enjoyable. And definitely recommend going because we killed maybe like an hour and a half there. But I would definitely recommend doing that if you're going to go to Shanghai, especially because Old Shanghai itself is pretty iconic.
Yeah,
like architecture style wise. If you travel around China a bit, you really start learning the different regions in the architecture. Mm-hmm. And Shanghai and the Jiangsu province are pretty distinct, I think. Yeah. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
So so it's like it's very cultural. It's fun shopping wise. There's great food. Like it's definitely a quintessential Shanghai experience is to do Yu Garden in Old Shanghai. After we finished up that, we went to Shanghai Tower, which is the largest of the skyscrapers, not only in Shanghai but in all of China.
And it's the tallest accessible by humans skyscraper in the world. the observation deck is the 100 and something floor.
117. Yeah, it has. They have the highest observation deck of anywhere in the world.
Look how well prepared we are. I don't even know what floor it's on.
The Burj Khalifa. Well, they can just say it's on whatever floor they want, right?
Yeah, that's true. Well, I guess I don't know exactly how that works. I don't know if there's any laws for
the Burj Khalifa, or the Burj Dubai. Oh yeah, I think the Khalifa and the Dubai are the same thing. The record-breaking skyscraper in Dubai also has an observation deck, but it's actually not as high off the ground
118th floor, okay,
as the one on the Shanghai Tower. So even though Shanghai Tower is only the second largest occupiable skyscraper in the world, it still has what I think is the most important record, which is the highest place that you can buy a ticket to walk around in.
Yeah. And so that was really cool. So first of all, we went to Financial District because I don't think I've ever been there during the day. So we're like, let's go during the day. And we wanted to see the other two towers there, like the bottle opener, and which is the World Financial Tower. And then, what is the other one called again?
Oh, it has some old name. The Crystal Tower?
No, it's like Mao something.
Let's see.
This is really great, guys. I'm so sorry. We were usually more prepared. We actually didn't think we were going to spend that much time talking about Shanghai.
The Jinmao Tower.
You know what? That was close. I had the Mao part. So the Jinmao Tower and then the Shanghai Tower.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it because we had done the Oriental Pearl Tower before, an observation deck, but it's not nearly as tall. And it's iconic. I mean, you can see so far away. We could see Disney in the very, very distance. It took a little bit of trying to show Alex where it is.
I had a hard time.
And you can see the maglev like sizzling away from the city. And seeing the city itself for Shanghai is really cool because Shanghai really has like distinct eras because it's an old port city. And then there's old Shanghai from like the Ming Dynasty, which is very visible. And then all around it is like from when it was first like a really like an international place, or during the Republic of China, you can see that clear architecture and that clear, especially international influences like Spanish and Portuguese, French, all these different architecture styles. And then you've got like modern China. So you've got the first era of like modern building of China, which is like the lower, more high density neighborhoods and buildings. And then you have the later, more current level of like crazy skyscraper game with a bunch of like residential properties and complexes. But in Shanghai, it's all blended. I feel like every other city we go to in China,
it's very
like the outskirts are all like the neighborhoods and like all the concept cities and concept apartment complexes. But then like it's almost like formulaic. But in Shanghai, it's very blended. Like right next to the financial center, you have these like houses or lower level, like maybe 3-story tall apartment complexes. But that's not like that anywhere else in China. I've found. So I really enjoyed being up there and like looking around. To be honest.
Yeah, it was, considering how many times we've been to Shanghai, it was kind of surprising that it took us this long to do the Shanghai Tower observation deck, because it really delivered. Like,
it really
delivered on the promise of being delightful. After that really took out, like, that was really all of our priorities in Shanghai. We went to the Shanghai New Brand Mall, which is the big shopping mall right in the financial district area, which is where we fell in love with cheese tea.
Originally, back in 2018.
We had cheese tea today, actually, to commemorate recording this podcast. And we had lunch there. Well, dinner, lunch. And then we went to the Disney flagship store that's also right there, which is...
It's okay.
Yeah, it's cute. It doesn't have much to offer outside of what you can already access in Shanghai Disney. But yeah, we had a really nice time doing more of the Shanghai things to cap off the planned portion of our trip, because then like the next day we ended up going to Hong Kong Disney because it was going to be easier to get home via Hong Kong than it was via Shanghai.
Yeah, it's going to be more fun going home that way. Yeah. And first of all, we had kind of like a day planned in Shanghai, and then we were going to take an afternoon flight. But then there was a late flight out of Hong Kong, and we could just get on an early flight on Cathay Pacific for a pretty decent price. So we did that. If anyone ever goes to China and you haven't listened to our past episodes, the apps you want to have are going to be Alipay. You want to make sure your American credit card's linked and your identity verified with your passport. Very important. First app. Second app I would really recommend using is Trip. Download the Trip.com app. We get our plane tickets on there, train tickets on there. You can even like make a train reservation, and when train tickets opens, the system automatically books you. You don't have to worry about being there when the system opens, because some trains will sell out pretty quick.
Yeah.
So like great. That app will just like, as soon as like you put all your information in, they kind of guarantee you a price. and then boom, they'll book the tickets for you. You just get a notification saying, okay, your tickets are booked now. You know, it's really easy. Really easy. Anyway, so we used Trip.com and last minute booked a flight on Cathay Pacific to Hong Kong to go see some family and go to Hong Kong Disney and then fly home late that evening. And it worked out great.
It worked out really well.
Since that's the end of our trip, we will be discussing kind of everything else in order, to be honest.
Yeah.
So that will be our episode towards the end of this China series, which will be, I think, 5-6 episodes because I also end up going to Singapore. A lot going on.
A lot.
A lot's going on. Like, oh my god, too much. I need to not jump ahead. Anyway, are we ready to talk about...
Let's talk about Shanghai
Disney?
Disneyland. We had such a great time, you guys. We have always loved Shanghai Disney. This was definitely... This was our favorite park, at least from between 2018 2019. And then Chimelong Ocean Kingdom kind of dethroned it. And then Disneyland Paris came up. And so these are like our top 3. I would say that the top 5 is rounded out by like Efteling and like Disneyland and Anaheim. And this time going to Shanghai Disney, we didn't know what to expect because a lot of time has passed. A lot has happened, obviously. And it was like, are we still going to love this park as much as we did? Is it going to feel really well maintained?
So, like we kind of mentioned earlier, we did the early admission, which was great because it's really not that much extra. It's really,
it's
really
like extra
cheap.
$20 per person.
So, first of all, these parks are very, very busy. Like, very, very busy at opening. It's kind of like the Chinese culture to all be there when the park opens. So, it was nice because we got up at like 5. We kind of took our time. And then we got to the park. I think we left for the park on the 6 o'clock shuttle. Really early in the morning. Yes, we get it. But then you get to the park at like 6:20 and you have to walk across the bridge to the entrance. You're there at 6:30. And then at 7, the early admission started. I think they let us in at like 6:50. So honestly, timing-wise, we didn't really wait that long at all. Like it all worked out really well. So we got into the park at 7 a.m. And we went straight to ride Tron. And the main reason is because we bought a ticket package that included premier access to some rides, including the new Zootopia ride. So we didn't necessarily need to rush there, even though we did ride it several times early in the day because it was
we ended up getting 3 rides on it, which is awesome.
But we didn't rush there because we had a passport. So and we figured everyone would rush there, which everyone did. I mean, everyone went straight there. There was already a line to get into the land right away because they do have like a line to get into the land, and it will get up to sometimes over an hour long. Like it is, they have a whole tent set up for it. But we'll get to that. And anyway, so we went to Tron first because we got engaged there like 5 years ago almost. So it was kind of cute to go be there again and to see how it compares to the Orlando one. And it was obviously going to be nobody there when the park opened. So we got several rides in. Also,
when we got into the park, the infrastructure that they had done. The updates to the entrance plaza for like queuing and accessing the park and going through security was so well done. The trees in the area have grown up really nicely. They definitely they did some major demo on the original plaza to build permanent infrastructure and plant more trees. So like it was even nicer and prettier than I remember. Really, the whole park was even nicer and prettier than I remember. The landscaping
which is pleasant,
just unbelievable.
Because when we were there in 2019,
really nicely.
Yeah, there was a couple of things like the Tron queue. I was like, oh my god! Like in 2019, it was now 3 years after opening, and we're like, some of this is already kind of looking like it's, kind of being
needs some help,
needs some love. But you know what? Everything was in incredible shape. Like it is amazing how much nicer. Funny enough, the park felt in. Almost like it was newer than Universal Beijing, even though it's significantly older. Yeah.
And that goes. I mean, Tron looked great. They added some new effects in the show building.
Can you believe that? The update that showcase at the end.
So yeah, the Tron realm got
the
updated.
Exit was updated.
The
queue was looking nicer now. They changed the floor on the queue.
They added screens to the station for loading and unloading.
Oh my god! Yeah, Tron was really impressive. How much they upgraded Tron.
Yeah,
Tron was in excellent shape. And I think it's funny because for a while, especially when Tron here first came out, we were like, Tron Orlando. We're like, we can't believe it. The Walt Disney World one is nicer.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, Tron is so great. But then, now we come back to Shanghai, and they added effects. They updated the exit, the queue, the station. And I'm like, shit, now this one's a favorite one again. Like, the one that's not near us. Like, how did it happen? How is this the fave again?
After that, we couldn't get a clear answer if, like, Zootopia was part of the
early
early entry.
Well, it said it wasn't on the website, but then we look at the map and we see it open.
Stuff was open.
We're like, what? So we went over
Tron,
anyway, right?
We rode Tron a couple of times, actually, because there was no one there. Then we headed over to Zootopia, and it was fine, because even though we walked over there well after, like, early entry rope drop, it was still before public entry. And so we got to the Zootopia area, and we went through the regular standby queue to get on the ride, but we didn't wait very long.
We didn't wait long at all. I think we waited like 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, it was cool to go through the standby queue.
It tells way more of a story. Yeah.
Even if you have the premier access for this ride, getting there early and going through the standby queue when there's not a lot of people in it is still a good thing to do, because you really get a lot of details from the whole experience by doing the standby queue. That being said, the ride is also really excellent on its own. So if you only do Premier Access or single rider, they have a not very well advertised, probably by design, a not very well advertised single rider entrance.
That looks great.
Like there's 3 ways to ride.
That's how we got to ride the third time.
Yeah, we did all 3 methods, and so it's just nice for being able to get on quick and easily with re-rides. The ride is excellent.
I will say, I think what's nice about this ride is that it felt incredibly high budget.
Yeah.
It felt like almost like a Tokyo Disney project where like money was no object, which is nice to see at a non-Tokyo park.
Yeah.
So the queue was awesome, and it had a couple of really good animatronics and the pre-shows, and the way they space you out. It's kind of clever, kind of breaks up the queue a little bit by having shows kind of throughout.
The way that they have an audio animatronic pre-show that all 3 different queues go into and meet up into. And it's just a really cleverly designed system.
And then the ride itself, great capacity. They would dispatch 4 vehicles at a time.
The vehicles hold 10 people.
And people kind of mentioned, it's kind of like a mix between Rise to Resistance and Mickey Mini, but I feel like it's its own category. Because, yes, it uses the same ride system, and to that degree, I feel like it's more like a Rise. But the actual ride experience was unlike any other. I feel like they got really creative by reusing some of the same sections of track. Well, I don't want to call it track because it's trackless, but you go through the same scene sometimes twice by design, by making you kind of like figure 8 through certain scenes. And that was really clever. And the ride is long, guys. Like, it is a long ride filled with animatronics, filled with special effects.
Yeah, detailed set designs. Great mixing of
colorful
scenes.
Very colorful.
Style choices.
Like, I was very impressed with this ride, and it may be one of my favorite Disney rides.
Everything really came together. Some of the stuff that we had seen implemented on other rides. Like, on Runaway Railway and on Ratatouille, they have those portions where, like, each vehicle enters an individual pod to do, like, a motion simulator sequence. Yeah. Zootopia does that, too, but the application of it here is by far my favorite, where you're entering the cable car vehicles in the rainforest neighborhood of Zootopia. So, like, it just seems like a perfect marriage between, like, the technology and this thing that they're able to do with the ride system, and also a storytelling component from the film that they were able to bring to life really cleverly, like in a way that it wouldn't have been easy or maybe even possible to recreate the cable car experience without using this method that they already had from previous attractions.
Oh, 100%.
And there's a lot of that on this ride. Like, there's a lot of things where it's like you see
like the screen projections, where like by building a screen in the middle of a scene, like a see-through screen, and projecting on like the sloth scene, where he rolls up in his car. That depth is something that it's kind of... I don't feel like I see it often on rides, the depth like that.
There was just a lot of things that you may have seen implemented on other similar rides, but that this was the best version of the implementation. Almost to the point where it feels like it was developed for this ride, even though you know that other rides have been doing it before.
Yeah.
It was just a really nicely woven, like a nice tapestry of different gags, effects.
I know there's some people here that really don't like watching POVs of ride they haven't ridden yet, but I would recommend watching a POV of it. Probably get a good idea of what I'm talking about. But it was just an overall incredibly pleasant, clean product with no dead space at all. Like, everywhere I looked, it was details, which more modern Disney rides, hate to say it, sometimes I really feel like you kind of have a lot of dead space. But this ride had no dead space whatsoever. And then the ride length, like I mentioned, was really great. The queue was awesome, but I'm also going to talk about the outdoor queue, which is just switchbacks. But, we had just been to Beijing Universal like less than 2 weeks prior. And one of the biggest problems with that is, and we mentioned in our podcast, it's the oceans of boring-ass switchbacks. Like, oceans of, like, metal gates. It's just, like, almost depressing. But then, these switchbacks, the queue here, it was so beautifully done. They can fit just as many people as the freaking Kung Fu Panda ride in Universal Beijing. But they somehow made it look so pretty. And they had all these little canopies and this landscaping and different colors of queue. It was... God, it was like, this is really how it's done. Like, this is, every inch of this ride is amazing. And I haven't even talked about the area yet.
The area
I'll let Alex
is
talk about
such
that a
a
little
knockout. The area is, I think, perhaps the best of any... It's easily the best of the newer Disney-themed areas. This kind of, like, era of stuff like Galaxy's Edge and Avatar and Toy Story Land. Like, but I think... What really sets this one apart is there's so much movement. There's animatronics everywhere. It feels like you're almost in a ride just from walking around. There's obviously like the same level of detail and commitment as what you would find in like Galaxy's Edge or in the various themed environments of like Tokyo Disney, for example, Tokyo Disney Sea. But everything, there's just so much movement. There's like so much more kinetic energy in this area than in like any other themed area that I've ever seen. Even areas like Shanghai Disney that we're very like quick to praise, like Tomorrowland, for example, has a lot of movement because of like its light package, for example, or like the Transformers Metro Base at Universal Beijing has like a really great nighttime light package. But this is more than just movement from things like effects and lights. This is like, they've really done a lot of animating with the different animal characters that inhabit the buildings that you're walking by. And a lot of it is practical. There's some screens and stuff like for the Zootopia train station and stuff, but the screens are not the focus, and they're usually set in such a way. This goes for the ride too. When you see a screen on the ride, it's really less about the focus and more about like setting a background. There's just a couple of moments on the ride where it's like very screen based, but it's still so smoothly woven in and like necessary to the experience that it works. There's some things that you simply can't do with physical props and have the same like effect. But for the area itself, they pretty much everything that they could have done with a practical effect, they chose to do with a practical effect. And even the static stuff that isn't animated, stuff that isn't like characters walking around and things moving, like are still really fun and interactive. Like giant park benches for polar bears and like miniature parking spaces for shrews and like that, all that kind of stuff. Little houses that are occupied by animals of every shape and size, kind of cleverly woven into each other and cohesive. Like, it definitely delivers on the promise of a Zootopia-themed area where animals from all of these different environments are somehow commingling.
Yeah, living together.
In a very, like, clever and creative way.
We didn't get to see the puppet show, though. Which they have a puppet show?
Yeah, they do, like... Yeah, they do sequences of, like, the people of Zootopia, the animals, the residents of Zootopia. It was just hard to coordinate being in that area because... It has a standby queue to go into the area.
Yeah, the nice thing is if you have a premier access for the ride, you get premier access into the area, which is great.
Yeah.
Other than that, you could be waiting a long time to get in because the area isn't that big. I mean, it's decent size. It's bigger than Frozen is, and maybe it's actually about the same size as Frozen is in Hong Kong. But getting in, I can take a minute.
And if the ride breaks down,
a whole like building just for the queue inside, and I think we saw it go up to like 70 minutes.
Yeah, if the ride breaks down, they don't let people into the area.
Because the Shanghai Disney is really big on queue dumping, which is actually one of our like less exciting
parts. Something that we wanted to bring up.
Because they queue dump pretty much immediately. So, like, say that Pirates of the Caribbean, we were in line for Pirates, we see the boats running, the lines moving, and suddenly the boats stop running. And within 5 minutes, they dump the whole queue. So we get an extra fast pass. We get outside, and the fucking ride has reopened.
The ride's already open.
And we're like, all right, so why are we dumping?
By the time we did the same
thing.
Everyone.
They did the same thing for Zootopia at one point in the middle of the day. We were in the line for it, but because they dumped the whole ride, the whole land was so full of people that the actual way to get into the land was easily I think it was set to 70 minutes.
Yeah.
The queue just to get into the land, which is like, well, if you didn't dump, you would have been able to let people in and out.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to Tron later in the night, and sure enough, it breaks down, and they dumped the whole queue. But this was happening a lot. Were we in the station for Tron when it dumped? We were almost on. They dumped. So we're like, shit. So it just happens. I feel like they just dump pretty quick. And I don't mind waiting. I know that maybe it must be customer service relations related thing where people would complain about waiting and then the ride eventually not reopening, so they just dump it prematurely and give you a fast pass.
Yeah.
But for us, it was like, well, I don't mind waiting an extra half hour and hope they reopen, especially because everything ended up reopening anyway.
Yeah.
For Tron, we thought, okay, maybe it's the end of the day, like they're not going to reopen. Sure enough, we're at the freaking taxi stand, ready to go,
reopen.
And it reopened already.
I don't know if we were tired. It was a long day, and we were tired, and we weren't sure if we were going to last.
Actually, they gave us a fast pass. And we actually used it on Seven Dwarfs.
Yeah,
you know what? It was
that's
successful.
what we did. We ran off the Seven Dwarfs.
Yes, we did.
And got a night ride on that, which was
while we're on Tron, real
it.
quick, I do want to mention they completely redid the gift store too. I just remember because I got some videos
the gift
here.
shop was really cute.
They have these light cycles like all around, and they like have the little ribbons of light behind them, and they have all these new merch, and it looks so good. Oh my god, they put some money in Tron. Maybe it's a sponsorship, or maybe it's the fact that they're already working on the US Tron anyway. But Tron in Shanghai is looking in its prime state.
Yeah, they did it. There's been a few things that got some noticeable updates and changes from our visit, namely Tron. And I think another one of the bigger changes in the park has definitely been like the influx of Duffy stuff. There's been lots of Duffy
that's right.
added to the park, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think the Duffy stuff is really cute. It can be a little bit of a head scratcher when you're not familiar with it. They used to have a Remy's patisserie in Mickey Avenue, so it was like a Ratatouille-themed bakery shop, and now it's been rethemed to Cookie Ann, which is one of Duffy's friends who is a chef. And I really liked the Ratatouille patisserie. I thought that was really cute and clever, but the food is still really good, if not even better than I remember. And like Cookie Ann is really cute too, and like I get it, go with what sells. The Duffy meet and greets are like chaos. The lines are so long. Like, there's nothing wrong with them like reskinning a bakery into something that has a more marketable theme. The tribal was it Tribal Table? I think the restaurant in Adventure Isle has not only been reskinned as a is it Lena Bell? Yeah, Lena Bell, who's another one of Duffy's friends. She is like a detective, I think, or she has a magnifying glass. That's her thing, and she likes to explore and like look at bugs and stuff, I guess. But now the restaurant has a Lena Bell overlay that includes a Lena Bell menu, meet and greet. They added a gift shop in there. So like again, it's that the restaurant was a little bit more in tune with like the overall Adventure Isle, like South America themed area. But then I'm sympathetic to like the park wanting to do things with their existing infrastructure that is going to make them more popular. Yeah. And at least with the Tribal Table, like, it has the Lena Bell overlay, but the restaurant has still retained its identity. It still feels like it fits in the area. It just feels like a bit more like a temporary skin that doesn't totally match up, but I guess it kind of does in its own, like, Disney way. And again, the food was good. The food is good. That's really all that matters.
And so I really cannot remember the order of the things we did in the park, but Pirates of the Caribbean, of course, was always amazing.
Perfect as always.
When you go to parks like this, and especially when you're visiting right after opening, sometimes you kind of fear of stuff not being in great shape. But that ride was in great shape. I think maybe there was like one tiny thing that wasn't working.
Yeah.
But if I can remember what it was. And God,
Captain
our ride
Jack
is just
didn't talk every
incredible.
time. There was a couple.
Oh, his mouth wasn't moving.
Yeah, there were a couple rides. We rode it like 4 times, and I think on 2 of them his mouth wasn't moving. There's so much.
In the first scene. Yeah.
There's so much moving parts on a ride like that. It's usually a matter of like not if everything's working, but if how much is working.
Yeah.
And luckily, a majority of the effects on that ride.
God, that ride is just so good. Going back there was almost like falling in love with the park all over again.
It was like going for the first time.
Oh my God, we just love that park. We always say that Disneyland Paris and Shanghai Disney are like twins in a way that the attention to detail and the grandiose of the actual attractions is so similar. Like I feel like every actual e-ticket in Paris is top tier quality, like top of Disney. And I feel the same way in Shanghai. I feel like there is nothing there I don't think is incredible. we went and did the adventure trail this time because it was part of our Premier Access package, which is really fun. We did, what was it, the A trail? Is it A or is it 1, 2, 3?
I think it's A, B, and C.
Yeah, I think we did the A trail. It's surprisingly thrilling.
Yeah.
Surprisingly thrilling. There's this part where, like, you have to climb around this rock wall and where there's a waterfall going into this, like, grotto, and you're, like, just, like, holding on to the wall, hoping you won't slide and fall. I mean, you can get hurt on this thing.
Like, the harness
honestly.
will save you, but it'll still hurt.
It'll hurt
so
like a bitch, though. Yeah, like, what are you going to bang against the rocks? Like, I was surprised by how thrilling it was. And then we discovered a giant walkthrough through the adventure trail area that goes to the mountain. I guess it's kind of meant if you can't do all the exciting climbing and holding on to rocks situations.
It's wheelchair accessible, which is really cool.
Yeah, and it was actually really pleasant. You can walk right by Roaring Rapids and see the boats go by. Like, I didn't know it existed, but it was really cool. And there was nobody there doing it. We were like the only ones doing it.
It was really fun, like, doing our ropes course. They have 3 ropes courses. Only 2 were open. The 2, like, good ones. We did, like, the best one, like the one that has the waterfall and stuff. But then doing the walk-through portion after, we got to walk underneath all 3 courses and enjoy the whole attraction that way. I have to eat crow because when Shanghai Disney opened, I did the ropes course in 2018 by myself. Or 2017 by myself. Sean and I didn't do it in 2018 or 2019. And this time we did it just because we had the Fast Pass for it. And because, we've been so many times, it's like, well, this is something that we haven't done together that's probably worth doing. As long as it's not like a huge time commitment. Man, I'm really glad we did it. And I guess I have to eat crow because I thought early on that I was like, this attraction's not going to last. It's really actually kind of similar to the Adventure Mountain Challenge Trail that Dollywood opened. And Dollywood's only lasted a few years, and there was all of these, it was like related to overhead and ridership. Like, it requires a lot of employees to process not very many people. And I just had thought, like, oh, this is not going to be like a good long-term, like a successful long-term attraction for this resort. And I could still see them choosing to redevelop this space in like
I don't think so. I think
10
it's kind
years,
of iconic
maybe.
Now.
But it has been a more practical, successful, likable, iconic attraction for them than I'd ever thought. So, like, kudos to them. Like, this park really did. The park still feels newer to me than it actually is. Like, it's easy for me to forget that the park is now.
It's been 8 years operations already.
Its birthday was less than a week ago, so it's a little over 8 years old. And everything that they did from the get-go is still open and functioning and working. I feel like most theme parks, even no matter how well intended and well thought out they are, there's always like 1 or 2 things from like opening day that just don't pan out or don't even happen that were, supposed to be something of substance. Like, the circus, not the Circus McGurkus, the Sylvester McBean and Very Unusual Driving Machines at Islands of Adventure, or like the canoes at Disneyland Paris, or just all sorts of even Zootopia at Hong Kong Disney. Like, these are all like that ride didn't even open with Hong Kong Disney, and it's already gone. But Shanghai Disney has only had a net increase in attractions since it opened.
And then next thing we did was the Roaring Rapids, which is a pleasant and maybe perhaps, depending on where you sit, wet ride. We got ponchos for that, which really were only like lasting 1 ride, but they were cheap. Mm-hmm. I do enjoy this ride because it's not IP, first of all. Second of all, it's beautiful. But then there's one part of the ride I don't like, and that's when you're about to descend down the first drop. There's this super obvious like backstage area that's not themed at all, and there's like bright white lights on these like panels. And I was complaining about it the first 5 times we've ridden it, and it's still there. It's still ugly, but there's a cool animatronic. Just, hope you can see it when you're sitting on the correct side of the boat. So I think, other than that, like, that's maybe, like, there's a couple flaws in that ride, I'll be honest. But it is a really enjoyable
Also,
ride.
It's hard to see the animatronic unless you're facing a certain way down the drop. And even though it's a really cool animatronic, I feel like you go through the little area where you see it a little too quickly.
Yeah, I literally did not see that last ride. I was so bummed.
And it's, the one that always deserves comparison to this ride is Grizzly River Run at at California Adventure.
They are so similar.
And I definitely still prefer Grizzly River And I wouldn't always feel that way. I think for a while, Shanghai's was my preferred of the two. But based on my most recent rides on both, I have to give it to Grizzly River because of the foliage, the amount of like trees and like nature around the ride. There isn't quite as much of that happening on the Shanghai ride. But both, I mean, still top tier rapids rides. Easily 2 of the top like 5 rapids rides in the world. And always worth your time, worth your ride. We didn't do Soarin' on this trip. The one in
we didn't.
That was the one major attraction in Adventure Isle that we skipped.
And
we also didn't do the pirate
show
this time, but we did do the pirate ship walkthroughs, which were cute.
Yeah, those were cute. We hadn't done those before. And then, to discuss a little bit of Fantasyland. We did Voyage to the Crystal Grotto, which we I think do at least once a trip.
I always love that ride.
Which is kind of like a jungle cruise, but then like a meets storybook canal
boats.
And, just goes by these vignettes and scenes and fountains of these Disney properties. And then it ends with, like, the Crystal Grotto being kind of the finale, which is underneath the castle, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Of course, we had Peter Pan, which is nice there. And we actually skipped altogether Toy Story Land this time.
Oh, yeah, we didn't even walk through it.
We didn't even walk through it.
We really enjoyed it in 2019, too.
I don't know if I care too much about it.
We went to, like, get the credit because the line was short. And then we actually stayed to do the Woody's Roundup ride.
Yeah, it's one I think it's my favorite of the...
It's definitely the nicest looking of all of them.
I think it's a favorite of the Toy Story Land.
Like, Orlando's may have the most substance, but it's not as pretty as this little Shanghai
one. Not at all. What else did we do? We did...
Seven Dwarfs Mine, we did
twice. Running well.
It's cool now that the ride is surrounded by Midway once again. Even cooler is that you can see...
for the first time.
For the first time. Like, Magic Kingdoms has always been surrounded by Midway, and we always thought that was, like, a nice quality of that ride that was unique to that ride. Shanghai's is still a bit more set in from the Midway.
It's also sunken a lot more.
And
like you can really like walk down and it's below you. Like it's a very different setup in a way, even though it's a copy.
Yeah.
It has a very different feel to it, for sure.
And I think it's neat that when you're cresting the lift hill, this also goes for cresting the lift hill of Roaring Rapids, if you can see it. The skyline for Zootopia, and then right behind it is the skyline for Shanghai. And it's sort of like they echo each other, which I thought was a really cute touch.
And then we did any more food at the park? I don't remember.
We mostly we had
our snacking, right? We had our little lunch, our little breakfast and our little lunch.
Yeah, we had our Duffy and Friends food, and we went to Cheesecake Factory.
Oh, that's right. We went to Cheesecake Factory. That's right.
That salad you like that they don't have in
the States, and they have it there. We weren't even going to go there. We were just going to get tea, and we walked by, and we're like, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
Bet. And
kind
then
of became a little tradition.
And the nice thing is at night is I feel like that park is so pretty at night, especially Tomorrowland.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice being back and having that like amazing sound score and having Tron interact with the whole land. It's just such a vibe being in that Tomorrowland at night. Oh my god, I love it. It was the best place to end the day.
Buzz Lightyear Planet Rescue.
We did, yeah.
That's a great shooter. I think I for a long time said it was like the best Disney shooter. Now I think the Ant-Man shooter at Hong Kong may have replaced it.
I think I still like...
They're both
I still like the one, I think, in Shanghai better.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not sure. I like both.
Tough to choose. They're
Maybe
both
I like
excellent.
The one in Hong Kong better. I don't know.
The Hong Kong one just really surprised me. It was a much higher budget reskin than I imagined it would be.
Yeah, the Hong Kong one is nice.
The Hong Kong one really blew me away. But that's for the next, not the next episode,
later,
but for a later episode.
So yeah, we're not going to keep this episode too long because I think, people know about Shanghai Disney. We've done Shanghai Disney episodes
We've done
before.
Shanghai Disney to death.
I think overall, what the big takeaways here are, we have to mention one thing before we finish.
Oh yeah.
The freaking merchandise scalpers.
The merchandise.
They're insane.
So let me start by saying that we took the shuttle from the hotel. There were 6 people on the shuttle from the hotel to the shuttle drop-off.
So early, like
and
6.
we were swarmed. A swath of stroller sellers and merchandise sellers and like stuffed animals and stuff like descended onto the tour bus and like physically put themselves between us and like the midway to the entrance of the park and the resort to like sell us things. And that became a common occurrence, not just in like ground transportation, but in Disneytown.
Anywhere that wasn't inside the park, which is kind of frustrating. And what it was actually all official merch. So what they do is they buy a ton of merch in the morning or within whatever window they have to sell. Like, they can't return it anymore. And they walk around all day selling this stuff for a profit, so for more than the gift store would sell it for. And then at the end of the day, whatever they don't sell, goes back to their boss, and they just show up in the gift store and they return hundreds, if not thousands, of merchandise items. And they have these booklets of receipts of the merch that they bought in the morning. And they have so much, it takes literally like a half hour for one person to return stuff. And it will make the line. We were like, there wasn't even that many people in line. We're trying to buy merchandise, but everyone at the registers was all returning merch. It took so long to get to that line. It was stupid. It was ridiculous. They didn't stop it.
That hopefully will change by the time we go back next time, because it's really a problem that just compounds on itself. You've got so many people in line gumming up the point of sale, returning these pieces of merchandise, which then makes the transaction process in the gift shop harder for like actual consumers like us, which then in turn kind of perpetuates why scalping the merch works. If you're asking yourself why people would pay for that merch at a markup when they could just go inside the store and buy it, the amount of time it took for us to buy like 2 things at the gift shop was insane because of all of the people who were in there doing these crazy convoluted purchase return transactions. And it kind of was like this, like, oh, that's why people will buy the stuff. Because it's like the merch is right there. You don't have to do anything. It's the same merch. If you want your Lena Bell like stuffed keychain, like you just buy it from this rando for a couple bucks more, and then they save you the trouble of having to go into the gift shop, which is a total cluster.
It's just kind of invasive though, because they like haunt you down for the sell shit.
Very invasive.
And it's
strange.
But it's all in the fucking gift store. Yeah. Like, you don't need to have it from the stranger that is not Disney. It's wearing, like, knockoff Louis Vuitton, trying to, like, force stuff into your hand.
Yeah.
And then there's, like, guards around and police, but nobody does anything about it.
I feel like the park could put a stop to it if they wanted to.
Yeah.
I don't think they've decided that it's a big enough problem yet.
Luckily, it doesn't happen in the park at all. It's only outside the park.
I think the staff at the World of Disney store, surely they have to spend hours of, like, restocking this merch and like processing,
processing rebates
the constant
and stuff.
flux of merch coming in and out of the store. I mean, stocking new merch is one thing, but I feel like when your store is constantly putting returns back on the shelves because of these scalpers, like something is wrong and like needs to be addressed. And on the one hand, it's like, well, they're selling their stuff. They don't care who they're selling it to. But then the overhead for their profits becomes so much higher because so much of your manpower is being spent putting merchandise that has been, who knows how, it occurred to me and I'm like looking around the store and I'm like looking at the shelves thinking like, gosh, I wonder how much of this stuff has already been sold and returned to the store, put back on the shelf, sold again, returned, put on the shelf. Like, it's just odd. Like, it seems, especially...
But it's not like I remember it being the case at all prior.
No.
Either. It used to be like, scalping for fast passes.
Yeah.
Or scalping...
Or they'll sell, knockoff mini ears and
stuff.
But
now it was, like, actual
on
merchandise.
On the train stations.
And I don't think it's just around the park. I think a lot of these people are buying it to resell online. And they buy... the sheer amounts... they were buying entire boxes of merchandise that never even hit the show floor. They were just buying them straight from the freaking park. And then bringing them back... And they had to go through. It is absurd. The stack of receipts that everyone had with them, because it was like dozens of these like people in fancy clothes that were clearly running sort of like scam operation business of like reselling all this stuff, just showing up and like returning hundreds of merchandise items. It was ridiculous. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen, and I don't remember seeing it ever before.
I expect Shanghai Disney to want to put a stop to this eventually because I think it's only going to get worse.
Hopefully it's a recent thing and they're going to stop it like a post-COVID thing. But
so hopefully they're good. Shanghai Disney is good about adjusting to issues with the like unique issues to this market because they did it with FastPass. They've done it with other stuff. Like they can do it again.
Park admission. Yeah, they did it with everything. But yeah, what I wanted to say before that thought popped into my head is that overall, I think the park is in the best shape it's ever been, which is praise because we've always been fans of the park. I'm looking at going back this year, despite not having any plans of going back to Shanghai this year. I'm like, it was so good. Now we need to fit in a little quick and dirty Shanghai Disney trip again because we had such an incredible time and we love that park. And I think the value of it, listen to the Universal Beijing episode, the value of it is great. I feel like what I'm paying, which is not cheap, especially not for Chinese standards, But I'm getting such a great product. They're getting all these rides and getting good operations, great operations actually.
Yeah.
Incredible food. Stuff moves. You get to the park. The operation getting into the park is clean, organized, well oiled. There's staff everywhere as far as the eye can see. It is a high quality, well operated, worth your money operation. And it is not a lot of parks in the world where I'm willing to put that much money for it. I mean, it's not that expensive compared to the US, but it's good. Like, it's a good... I mean, I love Shanghai Disneyland. Like, I am obsessed with the place.
And the proximity of this visit to our Universal Beijing visit was especially damning.
That is exactly the most damning part.
It made Universal Beijing seem like amateur hour.
And I told Alex, like, I'm tired of people mentioning Universal and Disney in the same breath. Because I just went to Singapore Disney, by the way. I mean, Singapore Disney.
Singapore.
Universal Singapore.
Singapore Universal.
I just went, literally 2 days after Hong Kong Disney. Like, this is all in succession.
Yeah.
Like, we saw the world's Disney Universal parks back to back to back to back in just, a matter of a month. So, it is one of those things where, we go to these parks a lot. And in the grand scheme of things, yes, Universal in the States, the Orlando operation is pretty good, even though I think Universal Studios Florida is a shit show. And then Universal Studios Hollywood is very impressive. In the States, Disney and Universal, they are definitely competitors. But outside of the States, I hate hearing them in the same breath. Because Universal in Beijing is nothing compared to Shanghai Disney. Nothing. It really isn't. And I really do feel the same about Universal in Osaka.
And it's not just because Beijing Universal is new. Because we went to Beijing Universal 3 years in, and we felt like it was a dumpster fire.
And we went to Shanghai Disney
3 years in.
Oh, and less than that.
And
you went less than 1 year in. We both went less than 2 years in. And then we both went 3 years in.
Yeah.
We have been to Shanghai Disney a lot.
And now we've been 8 years in. And literally every step of the way, Shanghai Disney is absolutely spanking.
From user-friendliness to, cleanliness
spanking
to
it.
Food to operations. I mean, it's every single thing is
merchandise,
better.
Everything.
Every single thing is better at Shanghai Disney.
Character experiences, entertainment, parades. There is not a single category between Shanghai Disney and Universal Beijing that Shanghai Disney is not completely winning.
Yeah, literally cannot be bothered to go to Beijing Universal. Having said that, though, please do be bothered and listen to...
Please listen to how bothered we are.
At Universal Studios Beijing. Listen to that episode. It's 2 episodes ago. And we appreciate you listening. I know our schedules of episodes isn't super consistent, mostly because we travel so much. In fact, this is my first full day at home in literally 7 weeks. This is my first full day that I've had the chance to even record a podcast, and we came right to you guys and record it. So take that, please, as an olive branch. Leave a review wherever you're listening, preferably 5 stars.
Olive branch.
Yes, olive branch.
You're so corny.
And share this podcast with your friends and family. And stay tuned for a lot of new episodes coming up. And I'm forcing Alex to record all these episodes with me in the next couple of days before I go back for a couple of weeks again and maybe hit some other theme parks around the world.
Yes.
Eyes on Gravity Max. Anyway, no more distractions. We'll see you guys later. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.